Hello, I'm Mary Davidson, and it's our community. We have the most interesting guest today to introduce to you, and his name is Tom Kane.
Hello.
And he is the man of 1,000 voices. Your wife never knows who she's married to.
Well, yeah, it does get a little confusing, I guess.
You have to wear a name tag.
Yes, exactly. Who's dead today?
That's right. And you know, what fascinates me is that you talk for a living.
Yeah, yeah. I always say to people it's a weird job, but somebody's got to do it. So.
Well, that's right. How did you decide that you could do this?
Well, I was always a good mimic. My mother tells me that when I was a toddler, I would imitate my grandfather, who was from Germany, and he'd be watching the Kansas City Chiefs and cussing at the television in German, and I would repeat what he said, and she said my grandpa would just chuckle and go, "Yeah, the kid's got a pretty good German accent." So I grew up, you know, in the golden age of television reruns. You know, I was like a lot of kids my generation. Mom worked, and I watched TV all day after school, and so I got my French accent from LeBeau on Hogan's Heroes, and my Scottish accent from Scotty on Star Trek, and you know, things like that. And I didn't realize I had as good a knack for it as I did.
I just think that's interesting. They were interviewing some movie star the other day, and I saw it, and he was in a movie where he had to have an Australian accent or Scotch accent, something like that. And he said he worked with a coach for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I thought, whew.
Well, that's probably overkill, or either that or he wasn't a good study. It shouldn't take anybody 6 months to do that unless
What
you're...
struck you one day that you could make a living doing this?
Well, I actually was 15 years old. I was a, kid living here in Overland Park, and it was summertime, and I was bored. I was just watching television and watching the...
Talking to yourself?
Well, yeah, I did that a lot. I really did. I was trying to imitate what I heard on television. And I knew obviously there was a difference between the local advertising and the national advertising. Most small markets at that time, and to this day, 90% of the commercials that are done locally are done by FM disc jockeys at the radio stations. It's just they just throw it in as part of the package. And that's why everything sounded exactly the same. Everything was, "Come on down to the Waterbed Gallery this Saturday," So in Kansas City 30 years ago, nobody did anything that was remotely like national quality voiceover work. It just didn't exist. And I just thought it'd be fun to hear myself on TV. It didn't occur to me. I had no idea people got paid.
You've
for
been
this.
listening to yourself so long, you thought it'd be fun for somebody else.
Well, no, I just thought it'd be a hoot, because I knew I sounded better than a lot of what I was hearing on local advertising. So I started calling local advertisers and saying, "Hi, I saw your commercial for whatever, and it was terrible." And I had no tact at all. I was like, "Oh, it was terrible, and I can sound better." Well, of course, most of the time I was talking to the owner or whatever, and he was, not happy with my assessment and hung up. Well, one day I called. I saw a PSA for the American Cancer Society. And it sounded like they stuck the microphone in front of the receptionist, which is actually turns out exactly what they had done. And I said, I gave them the little, I'd be willing to do whatever. And an hour later, I get a phone call from the largest ad agency in Kansas City at that time that was doing their work, pro bono. And they're like, "Wow, we'd really love to have a professional voiceover guy." Well, professional went right over my head, and I'd never heard the term voiceover before.
Now,
but
by that time, had your voice gotten
I sounded like this.
You sounded,
so, yeah, people would call, from the time I was 12 on, people would call and think I was my dad, because I had a deep voice. And so they said, "Yeah, this Thursday we're doing one, we'd love to." Yeah, sure. So I had to have my dad drive me down. Of course, there's a little bit of comedy where they walk up to my dad, and they start giving him a script and talking to him, and he's like, "No, it's the pimply-faced kid in the fringy cutoff jeans over here." So of course, the poor producer,
I bet they nearly had a stroke.
Well, the engineer's he's putting a mic on me. I mean, not on me, but he's setting me up in front of the mic, and I see through the glass this poor guy getting just chewed out. There's a creative director, because they've rented a nice studio, and and I look up and I say, I didn't know the term dialect. I said, "Do you want this in some kind of accent?" And the creative director or producer or whatever he was, he hits the talk back and goes, "What?" I said, "Do you want this in some kind of accent?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I thought this might sound good as like the old Pepperidge Farms guy from New England." And he goes, again, I'm a pimply-faced 15-year-old from Overland Park, and he goes, oh, you do a 70-year-old man from New England, do you? And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "Well, let's hear that." So I was like, I still remember, it's so funny, you never forget your first commercial. Every weekend, a couple dozen Kansas City families have a couple dozen garage sales. But on July 1st and 2nd, 1,000 Kansas City families are going to have just one garage sale. A very big garage sale. It's at the Glenwood Manor Convention Hall. All the proceeds go to the American Cancer Society. And all the bargains, well, those go to you. The engineer looks up and he goes, that's 29 on the nose, which is perfect. Completely by coincidence. I had no idea. I could, you know. And I look
You've
up
gotten
and
better at that.
I look up and these two guys are just going, and he goes, yeah, that's good. So we recorded it. I did 3 takes. They said, we're good. And 3 days later, the phone rings. It's the same ad agency, and they wanted to hire me to do 5 commercials for TV commercials.
In your regular voice?
Well, no, in a character voice. And so I go down there, same thing I did my dad, same thing happened. They walk up to my dad now, the whole little bit of comedy goes over. But this time the difference is they push paperwork across to my dad and they go, well, we didn't know he was a minor, so you're going to have to sign the contracts. And I'm like, contracts? What contract? You know, I'm looking at these scripts where I was the voice of a son. I was supposed to be the son, and they decided they wanted to sound like a cowboy. So I was doing sort of the old Rex Allen from Walt Disney, you know, travel pictures back then. So my dad goes, Tommy, they're paying you for this. And you know, this is 1977, and I'm 15 years old. I'm thinking, ooh, like
that's
$20 or something. What did they? That's a lot of money. And he goes, no, they're paying you a lot. And I'm like thinking, ooh, what, $50? And I said, really, how much? And he goes, they're paying you $1,200. And I went, my brain couldn't wrap around it. It's like, well, is it 12 or is it 100? And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait. And I went, oh, I'm getting a car. So,
and your father said, no, we're going home.
No, my father said, I know what you're doing for a living. But yeah, I actually put myself through college, and by the time I got out of high school, I'd probably done 100 different commercials, and I started actually writing them because people would.
Do you do that now? Do you write now?
No. I don't have the time.
Well, I know that you do lots of voices. Some of them are real people, and some of them are not. You do Yoda.
I'm the voice of Yoda. A Jedi Master you have found, yes, or at least his voice. Sense it, I do. Yes,
and you do Morgan Freeman.
I do ADR work for Morgan Freeman. The temperature is now 75 below zero, and a number of the penguin chicks do not survive the night. And we discover that, yes, indeed, penguin tastes like chicken. So.
And Sean Connery.
Yes, I've done work as Sean Connery before. I actually met him one day. I was doing the announcing at his Lifetime Achievement Awards at the AFI, and we were standing at the bar. And the whole theme of the evening, everybody was trying to do their best Sean Connery. And that night, he actually sounded really bad. His voice was very thin that night. He had some sort of laryngitis.
Well, he's not getting any younger.
No. And I was standing at the bar, and I turned to him, and some guy was trying to do something, and he just shook his head. He's like, oh, please don't. And I looked at him, and I said, you must get really tired of all that. And he goes, you have no idea. He goes, everybody tries to do their best bloody Sean. To me, it's like, I know what I sound like. I don't need to hear it from you, you know? And I said, well, I actually have been hired to do your voice before. And he goes, for what? And I said, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He goes, oh, that piece of, you know. And he goes, well, come on, let's hear it. And I went, what? He goes, come on, let's hear it. And I went, oh, no, I've been working all day. It's a bar, it's loud. And he goes, no, come on. And he leans over, and I go, oh, this is awful. So I sputtered a few lines of Connery into his ear, and he stands up and he goes, it's not bad. I've heard better. so of course that brought me way down a bit.
That's right. Well, you need humbling experiences from time to time.
I saw his son a couple days later, and he goes, yeah, it sounds like Dad. So.
Well, is it easier to do a real person or a cartoon character?
Well, to me, they're all cartoon characters. I mean, any voice that's not my own is a character voice. It may be a realistic character voice in the case of, me just doing if I'm just trying to do someone that sounds like they're from the UK, he's just a British person with some sort of nondescript, UK accent. I mean, that sounds like a real person to you, but to me, it's just a cartoon character. It's just
might as well be Woody Woodpecker.
Right, not a flamboyant one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're all just different voices.
How do you, if you're going to imitate some person,
right,
living or dead, how do you commit that? What do you do?
Well,
what's up here? So you commit that voice.
A lot of people really have to work at it. They'll sit and, I mean, there's some especially cartoon guys, that will literally sit in front of the mirror and contort their face to try to see what they have to do to get different sounds. I'm not that dedicated. To me, if I can do it, it's there.
You kind of do it rocking chair style.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like if someone says, "Can you do this kind of voice or this individual?" I try it, and I can tell immediately if I can do that voice with a little bit of effort. If I can, I do it. If I can't, I just say no, I can't do that.
Who can't you do?
Well, most people I can't do. I can't do you. I couldn't do him. I couldn't do him. You know, I mean.
So it has to be.
There has to be a hook. You know,
I was going to say it has to have some little difference.
Well, yeah, like people at least once a month, someone will contact me to say, "Can you do Tom Hanks?" I get Tom Hanks all the time. Well, there's no hook there. Yeah. You either sound like Tom or you don't.
But Tom Hanks doesn't have any little peculiarity in his voice.
And there's the funny part is I actually just refer everybody to his brother Jim, who sounds exactly like him. Actually, most of the people in the country hear Jim doing Tom's voice, and they don't know that it's Tom. Like there's a lot of stuff that's for Toy Story and some of the other characters.
That's genetic.
Well, yeah, I mean, because they sound, they look alike and they sound exactly the same.
Does pitch have anything to do with your ability to mimic?
Well, yeah, I mean, I obviously think that something that's within my range is going to be easier to do. I don't have a profoundly deep voice. A lot of the movie trailer guys have that rumbling, you know, in the world.
Murray Abraham.
Yeah, I don't have that in the world voice, you know. But so yeah, obviously it's got to be something that doesn't make me strain to get there, because then I spend more effort trying to get the pitch right, and I can't concentrate on the sound.
Well, is it easier to do somebody with a low voice or a mid-range voice?
Mid-range stuff is easier for me because that's where my natural pitch lies. But I mean, it depends on, you know, I've done stuff for C-3PO, and that's you know, oh, thank the maker, this oil bath is going to feel so good. I've got such a bad case of dust contamination, I can barely move. Oh dear, Master Luke, over here. You know, so that's a different pitch for me. Yeah. It's actually very similar to a character I did. I was Darwin on the Wild Thornberries, and it was the exact same voice. No one ever figured that out. It was
really?
Darwin was, "Oh, Eliza, stop playing with the elephants. Donny, put down my cheese munchies." You know. But I get a lot of British stuff. I would say probably 20-25% of my work is in some British, Irish, Australian.
Well, you know, East Indian accent is a little. Can you do that?
Oh yes, I do that very often. Actually, I was doing some promos not too long ago because they have a Cartoon Network in India that they run in English and in Hindi. So I was doing promos for a cartoon character that I have that runs in India, but it is a British colonel. But the producer was from India, of course, so I was talking to him, and I said, "Okay, I want you to keep talking because you're giving me a good lesson." And I'd give it back to him because that's not bad, because you're doing very good. I said, "Well, thank you." But so the funny part is they didn't know I wasn't British. The character, we're doing promos for, was it Cartoon? Yeah, it was Cartoon Network India, and there was a tie-in with a cartoon I have running over there called Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And there's a character named Mr. Harriman, and he's this giant bunny rabbit, and he's got a monocle and a top hat and a big mustache, and he, you know, the voice is sort of a British colonel sort of thing. "Miss Francis, rules are meant to be followed." And so they assumed I was really British, and it was this whole promotion around a cricket tournament. I didn't even know, I thought I was reading some other language, all these cricket terms, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a noun or a verb. You're going to have to help me. What is that? And the guy's like, he's like, you're not British. You don't know what cricket is. I said, well, no, I've seen it, but I have no clue. He goes, oh my goodness. So they'd explain every sentence. I go, okay, this thing is it is a piece of sporting equipment, and then you hit the ball with it. So that is the noun, and that is the verb.
So you got multiple lessons.
Yeah, it was very fun.
I think that's interesting. Can you change voices quickly? Can you recall them?
Pretty much.
Well, what's up here? Is it a file cabinet? How do you do that?
You know, I always liken it to a hard drive. You know, and it's just, you know. Files that I don't access very often are a little harder to find, and so sometimes it'll take a little bit to remember. You know, John F. Kennedy. I did Kennedy, and I was hired to do him a few times. So, but it's not something that comes up anymore. So if someone says, "Can you do John F. Kennedy?" I have to actually go, congratulations. How does it feel to be an All-American? Congratulations. How do you feel? I believe he said he had to go pee. So,
so it's like anything else. The more you talk
Yeah, the more I do that particular voice
Then
or
the
character,
better, yeah.
then it's just there. I mean, there's some that are so, like, Yoda, I do so much. I'm doing some Yoda project every few days. So
Well,
that's
I know
always
that
there.
you do a lot of movie trailers, too.
Yes, I do.
But that's your...
Well, no, it's not. Most of them, again, most of the movie trailer guys have these just massive, set of pipes. Because they're all former FM disc jockeys. They actually are. Almost all
Really?
almost all movie trailer guys started
But
off
you've
as-
never done that.
No. Well, I know. Yeah. But being a disc jockey is like it's one of the. I mean, the guys who like it love it. But from my point of view, it's a career where the better you are, the worse your hours are. I mean, if you're like the top guy in town, you're getting up at 4 in the morning to get on by for morning drive time.
Well, and the other thing is that you're always you. This way, you're not always you.
That's true. But most of the movie trailer stuff I do is again in what I would consider character voices because it's not my natural voice. So like I do almost all the Disney Pixar trailers, and that's it's Disney Pixar's Up starts Friday at theaters everywhere. Rated G.
Do they tell you how they want you to sound?
Well, at this point, yeah, most of the producers, again, there's only a dozen trailer houses that do all the trailers, and there's only about 25 of us that do all the voices. So everybody knows me, they know what I sound like. So they'll hire me because, they know what I can do. I mean, one of the voices I use most commonly for trailers is Tim Allen is the Shaggy Dog from Walt Disney Pictures. Starts Friday at theaters everywhere. And, it's Disney Pixar's Cars, that kind of stuff. So to me, it's a character voice, but they know I do that, and I'm the only guy that sounds like that. So they'll say, we want you to do the Up voice or the Cars voice or the Toy Story voice.
What did you do for The Simpsons?
Just promos and stuff. I mean, the only time they actually animated me as a newscaster thing for just a really short clip, which was kind of fun.
And whose voice did you use on it?
It was just sort of my take on a newscaster. It's like, 36 people were indicted today by this child, including this woman, this man, and this man. This is awkward, So it's just sort of a high-pitched Edward R. Murrow. Actually, I got to play. Tom Hanks hired me to do a World War II. There's a museum in Louisiana, the National World War II Museum, and they did this absolutely phenomenal. It's actually what they call a 4D presentation. It's a movie that's about an hour long, and I say 4D because it's not only it's in 3D, but then they also have physical objects, like when they're talking about the Enola Gay dropping the bomb off Hiroshima. You actually see a full-size nose cone of that plane come down out of the ceiling. So, but they needed voices that to recreate some of the historical stuff that had been written but was never recorded. So I was actually the voice of Edward R. Murrow for the entire thing. So this is Edward R. Murrow coming to you live from London.
He is the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. What has been? Do you have any highlights of your career?
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm a Star Wars nerd, so being Yoda is sort of still blows my mind.
You have arrived.
Yeah, I mean, it's just surreal to be, I'm a kid who grew up in Overland Park, Kansas, and I saw Star Wars on the day we got out of 9th grade in 1977, and I actually found myself last year sitting up at Skywalker Ranch talking to George Lucas and telling him the story about how I saw Star Wars, and and my friend and I were just flipping through the newspaper back then, and we saw, of course, that full-page ad, with Luke holding the lightsaber up and Darth's helmet in the background. And my exact words, David, my friend was like, "You want to go see that one?" And I went, my exact words were, "No, that looks stupid." And I turned the page. And of course, we ended up seeing Star Wars. And, everything changed. But I said that, I told George this story, and he goes, "Well, how do you feel now?" I said, "Well,
much better.
I like it a lot more."
Yes.
But yeah, I've done the Oscars twice in the last few years. I was the announcer for the Oscars, and that's, of course, a pretty incredible thing because you're there, you're backstage, and you
see everybody.
You're meeting all these people because you're there for 3 days while they're rehearsing.
You've met a lot of people as you
I
have. I mean, doing voices, being a slightly schizophrenic, it's been a wonderful opportunity because you've met some interesting people.
Well, when you live in Hollywood, one of the things that's bizarre is that they're all there, so they all have to work someplace, and at some point, celebrities all end up having to do some amount of voiceover work.
Yeah. So you bump into him?
Yeah, you bump into him. I mean, you'll be in the studio next to Mel Gibson, and you're both getting a cup of coffee in the morning, and you're like, hey, how you doing? Oh, how you doing?
Well, if you had to name a couple of the most interesting people you've met, who would you say?
Well, Tom Hanks is amazing.
Because he's smart.
Well, he's smart, and he's refreshingly exactly what you think he is.
What you see is what you get.
What you see is what you get. I tell a great story about the first time I did the Academy Awards. They've got, of course, the red carpet and all the limousines and the limousines around the block waiting to bring people in and out. Well, there's a back entrance to the Kodak Theater that has a little miniature red carpet, and it's for people that want to bug out early and don't want to go out the front where all the reporters are. So it's private. There's no reporters. You can't put cameras there. But they have a little, all dressed up, a little mini red carpet thing. And there's sort of a semicircular drive where the cars can come in through security, pick up people, and leave. And again, nobody can see all this. Well, I was taking a break in the middle of the telecast. I had about 15 minutes where there were commercials and dance numbers, so I could go out and get some fresh air. And I'm standing out there, and all of a sudden everybody's going hubbub, because Nicole Kidman's leaving, and she and her entire gigantic entourage is coming out the back door, and she didn't have at that point she had not had LASIK surgery, and she had no glasses on, so they had to literally help her down the stairs because she was not able to see real well. It was dark, kind of dark. So they're helping her downstairs, and all these valet people they've got this giant limousine. Well, without anybody noticing, the security gate opens up, in drives this little Toyota, and parks, from here to me and you, and out comes Tom. And he had just driven himself from his house in Malibu or wherever to the Academy Awards, and was going to go in and give the Lifetime Achievement Award to Martin Scorsese, and he just is standing there going, what do I do? And this valet guy comes running up, screaming in Spanish and English that you've got to move your car because Madame Kidman has to leave, And all of a sudden he gets up there, and this poor valet goes, oh, Senor Hanks. And he turns around, he starts screaming, Senor Hanks. And everybody's, and so he runs up, and he's like, we have to move the car. And he's like, okay, well, I'm only going to be a few minutes, so just here are the keys. You can, And he goes, oh yes, thank you very much. So the guy moves Tom's Toyota as he goes in. I go back inside. I do a little more of the Academy Awards, and a few minutes later, Tom comes out, gets in his Toyota, drives away.
No,
he just did his thing. Just like,
but
and it was so humble. That's no limousine, no nothing.
But he's managed his life as a regular person. Yeah. He has a job and a profession, and then he is a person, just like Yeah. Have you had anything really funny ever happen to you?
Well, I don't know about funny. I mean, just again, just the people.
Well, you've met some very odd people too.
Well, yeah, Phyllis Diller was a ball. She did an episode of the Powerpuff Girls, and she had to be pushing. She was at 80 or more at the time this happened, and the whole session ran probably an hour long because she was so damn funny. She would just be making stuff up, and we'd just start laughing. And even at the age of 80, she was just absolutely 100% on her game. And I just looked at this, I'm like, I'd be happy just to live that long, much less still be all there, And
yeah, but the beauty about what you do is that if your voice lasts, you can go on.
This is true. I've actually seen guys, I think at this point you've gone too far, where they, like Burgess Meredith was doing Honda commercials, at the point where they had to wheel him in a wheelchair with oxygen tubes. Truly. And put a script in front of him. John Huston, the same way. John Huston, the director, the incredibly famous director, was doing voiceover the last few years he was alive. Sounded absolutely fantastic. But he was in a wheelchair with emphysema and from smoking and tubes up his nose, so they'd have to shut the oxygen off. He'd read a few sentences and then turn and I'm like going, okay, it's time to hang it up when you're, gasping between breath.
But you know what? It's hard to do when you have been in the public eye for
I'm sure
so long.
Well, especially for these kind of on-camera people that it's people think it would be wonderful and glamorous, and I'm sure it is, but I've been around enough of them to see that there's a real downside to this. I mean, you can't just go to the farmer's market and have a bowl of soup and a sandwich if you're George Clooney, because 15 times in a minute someone's going to come up and ask for your autograph. You're not going to eat your soup while it's warm anyway.
Everything's a trade-off.
This is true.
And
I get to be anonymous. That's good.
And you are. And when somebody sees you, I mean, you're all these voices, and so sometimes you get a picture of somebody in your mind, and then when they see you, they think, really?
Well, that happens. They fly me around to conventions all the time to do signing things for fans for Star Wars. And the funny thing is almost probably 3/4 of the people that have me sign an autograph ask if they can have their picture taken with me. Well, if it's a little kid, I just have the kid come around the table and I stay sitting because I'm 6.5 feet tall, so it doesn't work. Or if it's a little kid, I'll put him up on my chair and stand next to him. But the crack up is every time I stand up, every time, they're like, oh, wow, Yoda's so tall. I'm like, wait, the fact that I'm not green and an alien, that you can accept, but that I'm tall, that's a shocker, you know?
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's like, whoa. So,
is Yoda a puppet?
Well, originally he was, yeah. It was Frank Oz that did the puppetry and the voice. And of course now he's all computer generated, but...
well, so there isn't anything.
No, there hasn't been a physical Yoda in 12 years probably.
Really?
Yeah.
How about C-3PO?
Well, C-3PO is still Anthony Daniels. The original guy who was in the suit and did the voice is still doing it. Anthony's...
Is he a small person?
He's not, he's about 5'6" or so, and he's very slender, which is partly why he got the job, is because he could get in the suit.
Get in the suit.
And,
the prerequisite.
And there wasn't, originally they weren't planning on using his voice. You know, he naturally sounds sort of like that. You know,
does he?
Talks like, yes, he just talks like this. And he was just doing it, you know, on location, and they were planning, George's original idea was to have C-3PO have this incongruously deep voice, sort of almost like Darth Vader, out of this funny robot. He thought that'd be, but they fell in love with Anthony's delivery, and so they kept it. And Anthony's claim to fame is he's actually the only person that's been in every Star Wars movie. He's it. So
I think that's fascinating.
But yeah, and he was just in Kansas City a couple months ago doing the Star Wars in concert. So
who's your favorite character to imitate?
Probably Yoda.
Yoda. How about a real person?
Oh boy, real person. I like doing Morgan. You know, I actually fooled his son once, which was fun.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did an episode of Robot Chicken. We did a parody of the March of the Penguins, and Seth Green and the guys that do Robot Chicken were editing it, and Seth is friends with Alphonse Freeman, who's Morgan's son. And Alphonse was there because he does stuff on Robot Chicken too. And he heard them editing this stuff, and he goes, why didn't you tell me why didn't you tell me you hired my dad? And Seth says, like, that's not your dad. And he goes, what do you mean? This? Of course I know I'm dad. He goes, no, dude, that's some white middle-aged man in Kansas. And he's like, what? And Alphonse pulled his phone out, called Morgan, who was on the golf course, and he's like, Dad, he holds it up, and he goes, son, that's not me. And so I said, okay, I'm never going to top that. I fooled Morgan's son. So.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Do you have, what's in your future? What are you going to do?
Well, there's a new Avengers cartoon series starting next year, and I play an evil robot called Ultron.
What does he sound like?
You will comply. He's just very robotic and very monotone, and they put I am Ultron. You will, But yeah, that was actually, we did an Avengers thing a year ago, and I got to be Iron Man and Ultron.
What's Iron Man sound like?
He's just my voice. It's just me talking. But the funny part was, it was the only time I jokingly said, yeah, because there's big fight scenes between Iron Man and Ultron. And I said, this is the only time I've ever got to kick my own butt.
Can you switch quickly?
I didn't have to, because we record things separately.
Can you?
I could, yeah. But some people are, yeah, I can do that. Again, if it's two voices that I'm very, very familiar with. But you can't, you got to be careful not to do it too fast, because they need room in between things to edit.
You get all mixed up.
Yeah. Well, we were doing there's a guy named Corey Burton, who is a phenomenally talented voiceover guy. He's the voice of Cad Bane on Clone Wars, and Zero the Hutt on Clone Wars, and so many other cartoon characters. I think he's Bullwinkle. So we were doing a cartoon one time with him, and I'm sitting next to Jim Cummings, who's the voice of Winnie the Pooh and Tigger. And Corey was going back and forth with two characters. He was having a conversation with himself. And Jim turns to me and he goes, I swear I'm hearing him overlap himself. Which is, of course, impossible, but it was incredible.
I think it's wonderful. You have had a wonderful, I shouldn't put it in the past.
Well, I hope not.
I know, I don't want to do that.
I got a lot of kids to put through college.
Did any of them have this talent?
Well, no, none of them have expressed any interest in this, which is a little disappointing, because I'm like, well,
I could help you.
Yeah, I've got connections, man.
I don't know how to say thank you, Tom Kane, because it has just been a wonderful experience to talk to all of you.
Thank you.
And I hope maybe you'll come back and talk to us again.
I would be happy to.
And maybe when you do the new cartoon, we'll do it again. But I know that you have many people in your future.
Well, thank you.
And I know that, well, it's just an interesting life. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I think it's wonderful that you are part of our community. I'm Mary Cohen, and I welcome you. I hope you'll come back and see us again soon as we talk to all these interesting people that have something to say, lots of things to say, in our community. Thank you so much. See you soon.